Go ahead and take a seat. Do you remember what you wanted to be when you were in elementary school? I wanted to dig up dinosaur bones because I saw Jurassic Park. I think I also wanted to be a surfer once, just like, I mean, why not? That sounds fun. You can do that for a job, right? Some people do. But there was one time in elementary school where what I really wanted to be was the custodian. Not a custodian, but the custodian at my elementary school. You know, if you saw teachers, they would like give you homework, right? And if you saw the principal, that means that you were probably in trouble. But the custodian, he would just kind of walk by, say hi with a mop or a broom, and keep on going. It's like, wow, he didn't ask me to do something. That's cool. And then there was this huge cart. I don't know if you had any of these. This cart of giant paper. You know, in a bulletin board, they have the backing of the paper. And this stuff was like 4 or 5 feet tall. And it was really long. And it was in every single color, like red and blue and green and all the other fun colors like pink that, you know, everyone really likes but no one wants to say. Do you guys all like pink? It's a great color. And he would be the one to wheel this around. So when he came around with this giant rainbow of colors, I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that brings everyone rainbows. I want to be the custodian. Do you ever want to be the custodian? I looked at Peter, our sexton, who's basically a custodian this morning at the 8 o'clock, and he just smiled beneath his mask. So when I went to teach abroad in Japan, I found that they had a really interesting system. So for them, their kids, the students, clean the schools, which sounds like a great idea until you remember that, I'm sorry for all the youth in the room. Youth don't really enjoy cleaning most of the time, so they kind of just do it and run away. But it was great because it helped the students see that this school, this building was theirs too, to take care of it, to pick up after themselves, to know that if they threw that gum wrapper on the ground, they were going to have to pick it up later. And every single day, there were a bunch of kids that would stay behind and clean the school. And I had to watch them every once in a while, and mostly they fought with their, brooms and pretend to be samurai and stuff, like most kids. But it was also good to see them actually do this cleaning work. Excuse me. But there was still a custodian in this school. And my custodian, the custodian who I wanted to be, he was a young guy, big muscles, who he can pull around this cart and stuff. But in Japan, the custodian was a little old lady, and she was bent over from having probably worked in the rice paddy for her entire life. And she puttered around the school fixing this or that, or she'd sit in her room drinking tea. And I'm sure she unclogged a lot of toilets, and I'm sure she scrubbed where the students hadn't scrubbed well enough. But she also did a lot of talking to the kids. She wasn't a teacher, so she didn't give any homework. She wasn't the principal, so the kids didn't have to think of all the really complicated Japanese grammar that you need to speak to someone like a principal. She was the custodian. And even more than being a custodian of the building, she was a custodian of the youth. Now, in all schools, even the best of schools, there's quite a bit of depression. Growing up is super hard. And the high schoolers up there know what I'm talking about. You know, for us adults, even me, I'm a millennial. I grew up with the internet. But there's bullying in the schoolyard, but there's also, you go home and there's bullying online. And we don't know how awful it is to wonder, gee, if I turn on my phone, am I going to see something awful that I did and I thought no one was looking? But growing up is hard. And they have to look at us adults who try to smile and grin and bear it. But the world's pretty grim. We adults are arguing over politics, over everything. And if we're lucky, we argue over religion, but usually we don't. But we're arguing and we say, hey, come on, guys, be an adult. It's great being an adult. And then we go home and we're like, I got to pay my taxes and clean my house and do this and this and this and this and this. Being an adult is pretty grim, and we're trying to encourage our youth to be part of that. And sometimes it's not always a great thing to encourage kids into. But this little old lady in Japan, this custodian whose job was to keep the kettle of green tea warm, she was the warm spot in those kids' days. She knew all the secrets, the dark ones and also the good ones. But she told none of them because her job wasn't to be a gossip, it was to be a custodian. And all the troubled kids would flock around her. The bad kids who broke windows. There was a kid in my school who headbutted a teacher. Can you imagine headbutting a teacher? I can't even fathom doing that, but this kid did. He was the student council president too, so it was a tough little school at Ogawa there. But there were some kids who were so depressed they could barely make it out of bed and to school for every day, let alone, the entire school year. And there were some kids that had anxiety so deep that all these masks that we're arguing about wearing, they had to wear them because they could hide behind something. So they could even walk out their door. That's how bad their anxiety was. This little woman was the one who people would go to. The kids who were angry, depressed, anxious, scared, anything. They'd go and they'd sit with her, sometimes through the whole day. And this little woman bore the emotional weight of the entire school on her shoulders. And she was the most humble person in Japan I met. What is the time of your day when you know you're doing something really, really important? Not just sitting there filling out, just doing your job as you normally do, doing each item of your job description, or making your boss happy, or closing a big deal. But when do you know that you're doing something really, really important? Some days for me, it's being nice to the checkout person at the supermarket. I mean, I love my job. This is an awesome job. But some days it's like, okay, more emails. Okay, I've got to write how many people came. There's a lot of administrative work to it. And sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it's like, oh gosh, just want to be nice to someone. And you go to the supermarket, and you get to say, hi, how are you, and actually mean it, and want an answer. Did you ever say that to someone at the supermarket when they're like just busy doing their thing, and you're like, hi, how are you? And they're like, I'm awful. Did you ever have anyone say that to you? It happens a little bit too often. Helena and I often stage fights, like fake little silly fights in this checkout aisle just to make the people laugh. Really small fights, like, you bought the orange Tic Tacs again? Why did you buy the orange Tic Tacs? Why not the white ones? Just to make the people laugh, because we know that, it's kind of a rum job. But there are times in our lives when that happens often, and sometimes in our lives where it doesn't happen often enough. The human heart, though, is a sacred place. Other people don't get to come inside and trample mud all over it. We humans can make someone's life a living hell. But there is a part inside of us, a space inside of our hearts that remains untouched because it's where God is. When we look at another person, we don't get to see the depths of their being, of their emotional life, of any part of their life. We meet people at the supermarket, at school, at work, at school, and we don't know what it's like for them to go home. Or if home for them is just a house with 4 walls that they live in because it's more of a prison than a home. We can't always assume that a smile means that someone's happy. And when we say, how are you doing? That good means that they're actually good. Not, get me out of this place. I can't take it another second longer. And so James and John, they go up to Jesus and they say, hey, Jesus, we want to ask you something. And Jesus turns around and says, I'll give you everything as long as you don't ask for nothing. And these guys Jesus handpicked from the crowd. These 2 guys who are in the inner circle, they want to be somebody. Like Rocky Balboa, right? They want to be somebody. They want to be important. They want to walk into a feast and pass by everyone and go and sit on Jesus' left and right. And I know we Episcopalians don't like sitting in the front rows, but that's where you want to be for the people of Jesus' time. They wanted to be important. And I got to wonder, after they were finished wondering if they were top dogs, if they'd turn on each other and argue over who was top dog amongst them too. And Jesus says, I'm so glad you asked. What a great question. Actually, I want you to be a little old lady that keeps the kettle warm and waits for kids who want to kill themselves to come in and ask you for help. I want you to be the last line of defense for a hurting world. And it'd be really nice if you made it not just the last line of defense, but also the first and every line of defense. I want anyone who comes in and has a problem, not like a problem like, they just cheated on their test or they broke a window or headbutted a teacher, but real trouble when they come in and everything has been broken. I want you to be there for that person. When someone like this is brought to you, I want you to put down everything and not just help them, but love them. Love them with everything you possibly can give, because I love you. And God, our Father, and Father is, a metaphor for this giant explosion of love that is a person. I want you to be like God, our Father in heaven, who loves you so much that God came down here and would be crucified because it would save you. Be like that, James and John. Have you ever been the person who delivers someone rainbows? I don't like answering questions for other people, but I'm going to answer this question right now. Yes, you have. You have been that person who delivers rainbows. You have been that little old lady sitting in her room waiting for someone to come in and say, I can't take it anymore. Maybe not as much as you want. Maybe not as much as you hoped for. Definitely not as much as we've been called for, because we're fallible human beings. But you have been that for someone. Someone has come to you and asked for help, and you have saved a life. I guarantee it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here. Because that saving of someone's life, and that being saved, which probably also happened to you too, we Christians, any religious people, but especially we Christians, want to find what the source of that is. Why? How are we saving these people? How have we been saved? That's the call of being a Christian, to look out in the world and to see who's ready to snap. How is this thing broken? Let me not just fix it, let me love it, especially if it's another person. And so we come to church, and so you see this person get dressed up in all these fine clothes. I'm wearing like 80 layers of clothes every single Sunday. It's hot. We put on our masks, and we sit with people we may not know, we may not like, and eat extremely good pumpkin squares this morning. Those things were great. And we say thank you. And we look out and say, why am I so loved? Doesn't matter. You are. And your job is to bring people a hope that they've never believed in before, because they've been too scared or too lonely or too heartbroken. That's our job. It's a wonderful job. I think I just keep on repeating that last line for most of my sermons, right? It's a wonderful job. But your job is to love people. That's it.